A 12-year-old boy drowned in 1947. That should have been the end of his story. But more than 70 years later, someone was still leaving flowers at his grave. Not his parents, not his sister, someone else. Year after year, decade after decade. Flowers, poems, small gifts. And nobody knew who they were. Who would spend a lifetime remembering a childhood friend who died in 1947? And what could this mystery teach us about grief, memory, and the experiences that never truly leave us? Stay with me, because the answer is far more emotional than you might expect. In a quiet churchyard in England sits the grave of a boy named Carl. He was only 12 years old when he drowned during a Boy Scout camping trip in the summer of 1947. For most people, Carl became part of history, a tragic story from another time. But for someone, he never disappeared. Every year, flowers appeared at his grave, sometimes roses, sometimes hydrangeas. One year, there was even a bundle of corn and a pheasant feather. The gifts kept coming. Nobody knew why. Nobody knew who was leaving them. And one person became determined to find out: Carl's sister, Anne. She had been only 7 years old when Carl died. She remembered very little about him, but the flowers fascinated her. Who was this mysterious visitor? What did they know about her brother? And why had they never stopped coming? The mystery stayed with her for years, then decades. And eventually it became so compelling that it caught the attention of the BBC, which launched an investigation into the identity of the stranger at Carl's grave. Think about this for a moment. How many people from your childhood do you still think about today? Now imagine carrying the memory of one person every single year for the rest of your life. The investigation began with old archives, newspaper reports, school records, handwritten messages left beside the grave. Former classmates were contacted. Old photographs were examined. Every lead seemed promising, and every lead led nowhere, until investigators noticed one name appearing again and again. A boy who had shared Carl's tent the night before he died. They tracked him down. He was now an elderly man, and when they finally spoke to him, he said something nobody expected. "I still visit Carl's grave. Not occasionally, not on anniversaries, most of his life. For more than 70 years, his name was Ronald." And suddenly the mystery began to make sense. But here's the question: why? Why would a man spend an entire lifetime returning to the grave of a childhood friend? The answer reveals something many of us experience without even realizing it. Ronald was there on the day Carl died. The boys had gone swimming during a scout trip. When they came out of the water, everyone returned to shore, except Carl. His clothes remained on the beach, waiting. The boys became worried. They ran back to search for him, and then they found him, face down in the water. Ronald helped pull him onto the sand. Later, he gave evidence at the inquest. Eventually, the newspapers stopped writing about it. The camp ended. Life moved on. Or at least, that's what it looked like. Years later, Ronald became a police officer. When investigators asked whether Carl's death had influenced that decision, he said yes, and suddenly everything fell into place. The drowning hadn't ended that day. Part of Ronald had remained on that beach, not physically, emotionally, psychologically. Before we continue, if you've ever had a memory that refuses to leave you, or an experience that still feels real years later, like this video and subscribe to the channel. We tell stories like these because they reveal something important about being human. Psychologists have a name for experiences like this: cognitive immobility. It happens when part of us becomes emotionally anchored to a moment in the past. Life moves forward, years pass, people grow older, but one experience refuses to let go. For Ronald, that beach never completely disappeared. Neither did Carl. In some ways, part of him was still standing there, looking at a pile of clothes on the sand, waiting for his friend to come back. When Ronald spoke about that day decades later, it didn't sound like a memory. It sounded like something that had happened yesterday, as if 70 years had collapsed into a single moment. And then came the part that touched everyone involved in the investigation. Ronald described visiting Carl's grave. He would place his hand on the stone, pause, and quietly say, "Hello, Carl. How are you doing? I'll come and see you again sometime." Imagine that, speaking to someone who died 70 years ago as though you had only seen them yesterday. A friendship lasting longer after death than it did during life. Not because Ronald couldn't move on, but because some people become part of who we are, and losing them never fully removes them from our story. Yet the mystery wasn't completely solved, because Ronald admitted something surprising. He wasn't the person leaving the poems. He visited the grave, he remembered Carl, but the poems came from someone else. Which means another person may also have carried Carl's memory across the decades. Someone else may still be visiting, someone else may still remember, and perhaps that mystery will never be solved. But maybe that's not what matters most. This story isn't really about a grave, it's about memory. It's about the experiences that shape us. It's about the people who leave fingerprints on our lives long after they're gone. Carl died at 12 years old, yet his story continued. Through his sister, through Ronald, through the lives he touched, and through the simple act of someone returning with flowers year after year. Maybe that's the real lesson. The people we lose don't always disappear. Sometimes they live on in the choices we make, the careers we pursue, the stories we tell, and the memories we carry. Carl died in 1947, yet more than 70 years later, someone was still bringing him flowers. Maybe the real mystery isn't why people remember. Maybe it's how some people become impossible to forget. Because sometimes a life is measured, not by how long it lasts, but by how long it remains in the hearts of others. What do you think? Would you visit a childhood friend's grave for 70 years? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We release stories that dive into memory, trauma, and recovery. Check out our other videos. Until next time, remember, some people leave our lives, but they never truly leave our minds.